Hi friends. Hi there. How are you doing tonight? Here we are on Tuesday as always, and thank you for being here. So this week, our intention. I find benefit in the spaces in between. I find benefit in the spaces in between. Intention's always posted a couple days early. This one I think is a really neat one to kind of think about yourself a little bit before I have anything to say, because it's they're all open-ended, but this one, I don't know, this one just feels a little bit personal. Hey Katie, it's good to see you. Appreciate you being here. Appreciate everybody that's always here, and I appreciate the comments too. So I do want to mention really quickly, thank you to all of those that stuck around last week. At the very end, I said a prayer for my cousin that was in a medical crisis and a very rough spot last week. And then the next day, so Tuesday we did that, and then Wednesday, things were a lot better. So I know she had a lot of people praying for her and a lot of help with her medical team and her treatments and things like that. But thank you to all of you that stuck around for that, because I know it definitely contributed. She's got a lot of cheerleaders and every little bit helps. So prayers help, prayers work, and that was a good example of it. So thank you to all of you. So moving on now to this week. So I find benefit in the space in between. I find benefit in the space in between. So looking at the astrology going on this week, the big one is that Pluto and the Sun both enter the sign of Aquarius. The big news is Pluto entering Aquarius, because that is not something that happens very often. In fact, it takes almost 250 years for Pluto to make its way all the way around the zodiac. But the Sun and Pluto are going to conjoin at 29 degrees of Capricorn, and then they're going to move into Aquarius, all on the same day. So that is a big focus on what we're talking about here. A couple aspects that go along with it that are kind of neat as well. So we have a couple aspects that we're going to talk about kind of as part of Pluto moving into Aquarius, because they're happening at the time of that conjunction and as the two planets move from Capricorn into Aquarius. But the first one we have is a Mercury aspect. And this happens just before. So we have Mercury sextiling Saturn, and then Mercury comes into a trine with Jupiter, which that one is at the time of the Sun-Pluto conjunction. So that one is our big one. But I like this leading up aspect too. So Mercury sextiling Saturn. So Mercury, our mind, our thoughts, our perception, our communication. Remember the resource part of it that's in there as well. So you have this stabilization or this focus or this mental concentration of some kind. This concentration or maybe stabilization of resources. Maybe things start to come to you that are going to help you on your path somehow. And it's a nice precursor to Mercury trining Jupiter. So, sorry, lost my train of thought there for a second. So we're coming into, sorry, let me breathe for a second. Okay, so Mercury starts out with the sextile, the lighter of the good aspects, let's say, to Saturn. So it's this working together of the mind and of Saturn that we're going to talk a whole lot about Saturn here in just a moment. But it's this stabilization that we have, or this concentration around our mind coming in, and then Mercury comes into that trine with Jupiter. So this is after we have this stabilization or this focus of, then we have of the mind or the resources, then we have the expansion of it. So we have the focus and the determination, and maybe like the bullseye where like we're focusing on something or thinking about something, or something is coming up, and then maybe that thing starts to come towards you, kind of like that type of situation. And Mercury, and then Venus is squaring Neptune at the same time as we have Mercury trining Jupiter. So with the expansion of the mind and of the resources with Mercury and Jupiter, we have the square between Venus and Neptune. And when you have Venus and Neptune coming together, there's this very like creative and almost like a romantic inspiration that comes about. This can be on a, you know, like creative level as far as like artistic level, or being able to piece things together, finding a creative way to solve a solution perhaps. The inspiration sometimes can come through in a less tangible way, more of a sometimes more of a like spiritual or energetic type way, if that's your type of way to attune to things. Doesn't mean it has to be spiritual by any means, but there's this feeling of like longing for or idealizing something, or maybe even really longing for something to the point that we're like lusting for something. Is this big pull or this big inspiration to move something or to do something or to bring something in, to bring something forth here. And that coming at the same time that Mercury is trining Jupiter here, it's like there's this concentration of the mind and then this expansion of the mind, and then with that expansion of the mind, it's like we're opened up into maybe more of like a creative thinking or a creative mindset type of way. Does that make sense a little bit? It's really neat aspects to have as the Sun is conjoining Pluto. So the sextile between Mercury and Saturn will be just starting to fade, but it will still be in effect. Actually, let me show you the chart. Let's stop looking at me for a minute here. And let's bring the intention off. Okay, so this here, I don't know how well you guys can see this, but I thought I would put up the chart for the Sun-Pluto conjunction. We're not looking at house placement necessarily because that is going to be based on my location where I am, and not your. Could possibly change based on where you are. But I just thought maybe if we pulled up the chart, I've done this a few times, not too often. I thought maybe if we pulled up the chart, it might kind of be a little bit of a visual of things here. So, if you look at just about the 9 o'clock hour here, you'll see 229 numbers. So the bottom 29 here is Pluto, and then right above that is the Sun. So we have the circle with the dot in the middle. There is the Sun, and then the sign for Pluto right below that. That's the conjunction of the two planets coming together here. And at the same time, we have that aspect between Mercury here at so 7 degrees, just up a couple signs from a couple symbols from the Sun there at 7 degrees. We have Mercury, and it's making its aspect here to Jupiter in Taurus, which if you count count down in the signs here, 1, 2, 3, 4, you'll end up at Taurus. In the 4th house position down here with that number 6 next to it, that's Jupiter there. So they're sitting in this aspect together. Meanwhile, we have Venus at 26 of Sagittarius up in the 11th house here in this chart. And she's making a sextile to Neptune, who's down here in Pisces in the 2nd house location in this chart. So you see how we have these couple aspects that are happening just as the Sun and Pluto are coming together. The other interesting thing is that you see how the Sun and Pluto are at 29 degrees here in their conjunction. If you look across the chart, you'll see another 29. If you let your eyes go down towards the bottom of the chart and look for the Moon, which is also in Taurus in the 4th house position here, you'll notice that the Moon is also at 29 degrees. So while we have Sun and Pluto coming together in a conjunction, we have the Moon coming into a trine. So we have them interacting together at the same time. And I'm gonna talk about Saturn and Capricorn and Aquarius as far as the Sun-Pluto aspect goes, and that's gonna you'll see how the moon kind of plays more into that, and how I think that's a really, really neat little aspect here. So these are the Mercury aspects that we have playing a role here. In the Venus aspect, they're in play at the same time that we have Sun-Pluto conjunction, and then simultaneously within a few hours, the Sun moves into the sign of Aquarius, and then the Moon moves in, then Pluto moves into the sign of Aquarius. Meanwhile, the Moon has moved from the sign of Taurus into the sign of Gemini. So when you have aspects that you have at the beginning of a sign change or a planet ingress into a new sign, like Pluto moving into Aquarius, the Sun moving in Aquarius at the same time as well gives it more power. The aspects that you have going on around that time are things that you can look at for kind of cues of maybe what that period is going to entail a little bit. Kind of like how when we look at a new moon or a full moon and we look at the aspects that are going around and how that's going to feed into the lunar phases that we have, and that's that lunar cycle. So Sun, Pluto moving to Aquarius. Pluto moving to Aquarius specifically. When we think of Pluto, we think of upheaval. We think of transformation. That is the big key word. We think of unearthing. So Pluto also brings down a breakdown of things. Pluto brings in deep change through upheavals, in the way that, like, Pluto unearths things from below. We've talked about bringing things up from the underworld, Pluto relating to Hades and the things that are below, not necessarily in a place of the underworld like what we might think of as like hell or something like that, but things that are coming up maybe from the subconscious, things that have been stuffed away. Those are the type of things that Pluto brings up. Pluto breaks things down for future transformation. So Pluto doesn't always bring that exact transformation. Sometimes it does, but sometimes it paves the way for transformation too, because in order to transform something or change something, something probably has to be kind of broke down in a way, right? So that's Pluto in its own self here. Now we have Pluto that is going through Saturn signs. So Pluto has been in the sign of Capricorn since about 2008, and now moving into Aquarius. Before that, Pluto was in the sign of Sagittarius, and I believe that was from about 1995 until about 2008. So you can kind of think about those time frames from 2008 until now as we talk about Capricorn a little bit and what Pluto and Capricorn might bring up. So Pluto going through Saturn signs. First, we need to talk a little bit about Saturn. We've talked about Pluto and what that brings. Let's talk about Saturn. We've talked a lot about Saturn, but we'll talk a little bit more about it. So Saturn, if transformation is the big buzzword for Pluto, then the big buzzword for Saturn is limitations, or things that hold us back, right? Usually limitations or structures. I like to think of Saturn as maybe more like a framework than a limitation. Certainly structure works, but more like structural systems. Saturn stands for organization of things and putting things together in a certain way. Saturn is the planet of oppositions and a planet of opposing factors, right? So the structures of things are it's viewing the way things are and the way things are not, in a way, right? The framework. Things that are a framework or a structure or a system are typically things that are a little bit rigid, things that are a little bit fixed, things that are a certain way because that's the way they have to be in order for things to work, right? Or at least ideally in the way that we think that they're supposed to work, not that they necessarily always do. So Saturn has this framework and this structural system essence behind it here. And you see that both in Capricorn and Aquarius, but you see it within different ways. Saturn Capricorn, being a Saturn-ruled sign, deals with these structural systems and these frameworks and this organization of things, but it does it through a earthly type way. It does it through a feminine sign or a feminine aspect. So it does it in this earthly way. It's in things that are more tangible, things that are maybe more physical, possibly things that are more material, things that are more able to come to a physical form of some sort. Capricorn dealing with the physicality of life and physical structures and frameworks, can deal with things like goods and services. Capricorn is ruled by Saturn, so it has to deal with the framework and the structure, but it's also exalted by Mars. So Mars is really, really happy here. Mars is in Capricorn right now, too. So with that Mars aspect in Capricorn, you have this physical action and this movement and this motivation. You have this goal-oriented ambition, just like you have in Aquarius, but you have it for more earthly type things, a more earth element type things, okay? So it's more, this is where you get the more tangibility and the more stability of like keeping things a certain way. We think of Capricorn as hardworking, goal-oriented, focused, and it very much is, but so is Aquarius. We see Capricorn that way, I believe, because it's an earth sign, so it is that more tangibleness and it's more like that physical grit within the sign of Capricorn. But physical things, so goods, services, like I mentioned, property, money, assets, goals, ambitions of stabilization, stabilization within the earthly realm, within the physical realm of some kind. So if Pluto brings upheavals and brings changes and brings the breakdown for further transformation and reconstruction, I have a very limited view here in my little corner of Michigan, USA, but there's been a lot of changes within these structures and physical frameworks within since about 2008, 2009. We've had lots of, we've had COVID, which is a big part of it, but there's just been changes to like pricing of things. There's been lots of different inflations up and down here in the United States. We had the housing market issue that happened, definitely with like property and physical things, a very earthly type thing. So just think about what has happened in your life since 2008. In 2009 I graduated high school and moved, like 2009 is when I kind of moved out on my own. So maybe I wasn't aware of certain things beforehand. That's a very possibility because I was still within high school and doing other things. But there's this physicality within Capricorn, and if you think about societally where you live and the things that have been kind of going on, where do you, and within your own life, where do you see within this last bit of time here where we've had like upheavals and changes of different things within those areas? So that's Pluto and Capricorn. That's where we've been. We've been in this upheaval of the earthly feminine temple, okay? Physical things, but things that bring out maybe an emotional reaction. Sometimes with feminine signs you see more of this like emotionality, not necessarily like in an emotional outburst type of thing, but this emotionality in like a like a connectedness type of way, or like a deeper intuitive connection type of way. So Pluto moving through Capricorn, bringing changes to these structures. Now Pluto's moving into the sign of Aquarius. So now moving from a Saturn Earth sign into a Saturn air sign. where we were dealing with more physical, tangible things. Now we're thinking about very less tangible things, and now we're thinking about the intellectual, and we're thinking about ideas. Much less tangible and much more abstract. So we have Aquarius can be a little bit much more, you know, it's the air element, so it's up here, where Capricorn is still is much more down here and grounded and earthly, where air may have its own ideals, and it's not saying that it doesn't have a form, but it's more abstract and it's harder to grab a hold of, where Capricorn, being an earth sign, is much more just straight to the point. So Aquarius deals with, as far as like intellectual and ideals, it deals with technology, it relates to technology, but I think that I see it as relating specifically to technology advancements. You know, technological advancements come from an intellectual side of from somebody, right? Some sort of Aquarian type ping of some kind, but Aquarius is a sign that connects to more to groups and to the collective in a way. Not the collective, that's not necessarily true, but groups that connect us and the different ways that we are and are not connected. So I think specific technology things like the internet, most technology I suppose is to kind of connect us in some way, but I'm sure there's technological advances that I can't necessarily think of off the top of my head that are more for like individual use rather than like connection type thing. These days they tend to be more like a connection type situation. But Aquarius has this way within being an earth sign and being Saturn earth sign. There's this ideal, these like ideals of ideas, okay, and like ideals of intellect. And often it has to relate to us people and groups and like the overall humanity of people here. So the technology that connects us there. We mentioned that it's interesting because both Aquarius and Capricorn, they both have these opposites that are built in them, right? Capricorn wants to go forward and build things and move forward in stabilization, but it wants to move forward in a way that will like keep the status quo. So it wants to move forward in a way that will kind of like bring us back to something. Where Aquarius wants to is an air sign, so it's more intellectual. It wants to move forward, but the limitation within the air sign and the contradictory and the opposing side to Aquarius is that it has this rigidness within the ideals, okay? So it wants new ideals and it wants new things to come forward, but it should be within a specific framework because it's still very, very Saturn-like. I think it's interesting to note that where we said that Mars was exalted in the sign of Capricorn, Aquarius does not have an exaltation ruler. So there's this, there's other signs that have this too. There's a handful of them, but it brings in this this autonomous quality and this like standaloneness. So Aquarius, being this air sign, relates more to the collective and the more like overall group, something a little bit more widespread, right? Air is all over and it's everywhere, but it has this way that it wants to stay rigid. There's a very popular phrase that certainly was not coined by me. I've heard it lots of times, that Aquarius is the sign that loves humanity but hates humans. Aquarius is a sign that wants to work together and wants to move forward in these ideals, but it wants things done within a specific accepted fashion or an ideal, because it still has Saturn there, right? So it's like, we're gonna go forward and we're gonna move, we're gonna have this ideal advancement of some kind of this, maybe like humanitarian move forward, but it's like, either you're with me or you're against me type of thing. Does that make sense? Melissa's saying this is you, so does that make sense to you, where it's like either you are or you aren't type of thing? Saturn has these I keep talking about Saturn. I think it's important to understand Saturn in order to understand Capricorn and Aquarius. And then to understand Pluto moving from Capricorn into Aquarius, we need to understand the whole picture. So it's just piecing this all together one little bit at a time. So, we have Pluto moving from one Saturn sign into another. The point is that it's still going to be within a Saturn sign, right? But it's moving this upheaval in this reconstruction from more of a earthly Saturn, from a tangible Saturn into a more airy, more abstract, more intellectual Saturn. So maybe if we've had changes within a physicality of form or goods and services and like physical assets and of some kind, now it's like what kind of transformation can come within ideals, within our mind and our intellect. So yeah, there's this similarity, but there's this difference as well. So with where we're at right now, and our intention, I find benefit in the space in between. It feels like we're kind of in a in-between space here. We're in between the Saturn signs. We're in between the structures. We're in between the structure of physicality and the structure of air, the structure of intellect, the structure of our mind. Saturn is a sign within these, the way we're explaining it here. Saturn holds on to something, okay? Saturn likes to keep something. In Aquarius, it's that Saturn likes to keep its ideals and likes to keep its humanitarian influence as long as it's done the right way. Within Capricorn, it likes to keep its structure and its groundedness and its stabilization as long as it's done within a certain way. But it's holding on to these things, holding on to these intellectual ideas and holding on to this physicality of things. And then I drew a card for today, and what do we draw? We draw the Four of Pentacles. Look at this guy holding on to his physicality of things. So Pentacles, the earth, relates to the earth sign. And this hippo on here is holding on to his Four Pentacles that he has. So it's like the end. It's not the end, but it's like holding on to this Capricornian area that we've been in, and not wanting to necessarily give it up and move forward is kind of what I get from this card coming forward. So if we're not quite ready to, maybe we're still dealing with the Capricornian area, maybe we're totally ready to move on, maybe we've already moved into the Aquarius age. Aquarius phase, not the age of Aquarius. That's a whole nother bag of worms there. But if we can find some space in the in-between space, then I think it'll allow us to kind of prepare a little bit better. Both of the Saturn signs, Capricorn and Aquarius, they're both in opposition to the lights of the chart. They're both in opposition to either the sun. In the sign of Aquarius is opposite Leo, which is the place of the sun. Capricorn is opposite Cancer, which is the place of the moon. So although there's this way that Saturn represents things that are other than us, they're things that relate very much back to our overall story, in the way that the sun and the moon relate so strongly to our story. You can learn so much by looking at just the placements and the interaction going on with the sun and the moon in a birth chart. So I think when we have Pluto moving through these Saturn signs, these places that are opposite the place of the sun and the moon, it can be a place that it's a place that seems like it can feel like it's very far away from us and very close to us at the same time. Does that kind of make sense? Saturn is in the in-between space itself. So before the outer planets were discovered, Saturn was the farthest, it's still the farthest most visible planet, but it's the farthest of the traditional planets. So Saturn represents this border and this boundary and this in-between space of the physical world and the place where the planets have some sort of effect and that which is beyond. Okay, so then that which would be inward of Saturn would be the planets, the things that are changeable. Beyond that would be the zodiac, would be the things that are immovable, the things that are inchangeable. We have the fixed stars that move very, very slowly. These are the things that are beyond the boundary of Saturn. But these, beyond that boundary is something that is very, very far away from us, but also very, very close to us at the same time. You know, the sun represents the true essence, or sorry, the sun and the moon together, they represent the essences of our life. They represent the life-giving essences that are within us. They represent the father and the mother, so the parents, those which have given us life. The sun represents the intellect, the purpose, the soul's lineage, past lives, things that are outward, and the spirit and plot line of this life. And then the moon representing the environment and the body, the physicality of this life, our health and our ancestry lineage, where the sun is more of a soul lineage. So there's this place where when Pluto is within the Saturn signs, you know, there's this, within the oppositions, there's a pole, there's that like magnet thing, right, that we talk about. So it's either one side the magnets are going to pull together, and the other side they're going to repel against. So there's this like pulling back and forth, or this like pendulum moving back and forth of things feeling really, really close to us and then moving really, really far away from us. And when things move really, really far away from us, we can be disconnected. We can be separated from things. We can maybe, you know, not have a connection that we should have to things. But then when things swing really, really close to us, then maybe we hold things a little too closely, or we react a little bit too much. And I think with Pluto moving through both of these Saturn signs, I think we've already seen a lot of that pendulum swinging back and forth between this, but you know, maybe we will continue to kind of see that a little bit. It's just something to be aware of. So, you know, this in-between space here, between Pluto moving from the sign of Capricorn into the sign of Aquarius, what benefit can we find in this in-between space? While we're having this transition, while the sun and Pluto are coming together, the moon is trining both of them. So I find it interesting that the reason I talk about the lights here at the end is because as Pluto is moving from one Saturn sign opposing the moon, the place of the moon, moving into the other Saturn sign where it's going to be opposing the sun, opposing the place of the sun, it's in interaction with both the sun and the moon at the same time. And I find that to be interesting because I think that's going to pull something about this ingress a little bit closer to us. Or it's going to, at the very least, it's going to highlight that push and pull between the sun and the moon and the oppositions that are held within there. Our soul and our physical body, our intellect and our unchanging motivations and our plot line and our spirit, and then our mind that changes and our memory body that can be altered and changed in a way. I think that's going to play a little bit of a part here. So this space in between, while we're at this in between space here, and as the moon is trining that conjunction, it's moving from a Venus sign into a Mercury sign. Okay, it's going to move into the sign of Gemini, just as Sun and Pluto move into the sign of Aquarius. And what is our other aspect that we're talking about? We're talking about Mercury trining Jupiter. So as the moon moves from the sign where Jupiter is, a Venus sign, into the sign of Mercury, we have this interaction between Mercury and Jupiter at the same time of this big change of Pluto here. So that's amping up the Mercury. It's amping up the mind, right? It's amping up the mental resources that we have available. And Gemini is a versatile sign, so it's makes it feel like we'll be able to expand our mind in not only a Jupiterian type way, but also a Gemini type way. So what questions do you want to start asking? What problems do you want to figure out? What resources do you want to bring in? What do you want to try? What is something that you haven't done before that maybe you want to try a little bit of? So I find that's interesting that it's moving at the exact same time. Saturn signs can be a little narrow-minded in the way we're talking, but I think if we focus on these other aspects that we have and we make a little bit of preparation space in this in-between space, then we can open our mind through Mercury and Jupiter. We can have a little romantic creativity of some kind, and we can dream of something big enough to make us kind of act on it a little bit through Venus and Neptune. But making space for this in-between space here. Making space for the in-between space, yeah. When I put the intention on, I kind of thought that same thing, and I was like, it's a little bit funny. But let's put it up here one more time. I find benefit in the spaces in between. What kind of benefits can you find as we reflect on where Capricorn is in our life and where Pluto has been within our life, within our own chart? What house is it in? What planets do you have in Capricorn? What has happened since 2008 in your own life and in the greater context of life and society and just human existence in general? And where do you want to go from here? What do you want to bring into the next couple decades? Where is Aquarius in your life, and what changes do you see coming? If you have a fixed rising sign, then Aquarius is going to be on 1-year angles. It's going to be either on the 1st, 4th, 7th, or 10th house. That's a little bit louder type of area. So if it's in one of those places, then where do you see those topics starting to change a little bit within your framework? Where do you see things coming forward? This space in between allows us to contemplate. It allows us to rest. It allows us to plan. What other benefits can you find in this in-between place? You can find a place of maybe self-satisfaction, reward for how far you've come in the last while. I think Pluto takes so long to move through a sign that, and it's give or take, it's not 20 years for exactly for every sign. Moves a little bit differently through each, but approximately, say, 15 to 25 years Pluto spends in a sign, and that's a long period of time, right? So I feel like it's only fair to say that while Pluto is going to be going through a sign, everybody's going to have some sort of like deep change and transformation within your life. But if you look at what whole sign house that sign is, so was Capricorn, now Aquarius, you'll notice themes of those houses being where there's a lot of change going on for you. It's kind of like that a little bit. So yeah, that's enough rambling. I talked a lot today, so I'm sorry about that. Honestly, I had way more notes than I even went through today. I think there's a lot to think about here, and I think there's a lot to contemplate, and that comes with being in Saturn signs, okay? Yes, Pluto moving into Aquarius is a big change, but it's still a Saturn sign. It's still a rigid sign. Maybe when Pluto moves into Aries, nope, not Aries, moves into Pisces, then maybe that'll be a different story. Things will change. I think things will feel like more maybe of a, I don't know, I can't say because I won't be around. Well, I will be around at that time. I sure hope I am. But I'm not in the future, so I can't like predict what's gonna happen there or anything like that. And I'm not trying to predict what's gonna happen as Pluto moves through Aquarius either. But I do know that it's some sort of shift, some sort of societal shift, and usually right around the ingress at the time that the planet is moving from one sign into the other. That's when a lot of people, if Aquarius isn't like super important in your chart, it's important in all of our charts, but if it's not one of the loudest places in your chart, then the ingress is where you may feel most of the action going on. Kind of like that, right? So let's think about this space in between. Let's think about the boundaries and the framework that Saturn represents. So the structures and the spaces in between. So Saturn representing the structure. Think of it as the location. Think of where Saturn is at in the sky, okay? Think about the structures that exist on one side, which are all of the planets and all of their orbits. It's systematic, right? It's structural, it's organized. Things are moving, but they're moving in a very organized fashion, okay? All within the sign of Saturn, outside of Saturn as well, but it's the farthest planet is of the traditional ones. And we're in between Saturn signs, okay? And, you know, Venus and Neptune coming into a square allows us to kind of think in that, like, abstract in between liminal space a little bit. It allows us to kind of it allows us to kind of slip through in a certain way. So, okay, we better move on with our meditation here, because otherwise I'm just gonna talk. So I apologize for all of my rambling. So, okay, I find benefit in the spaces in between. I find benefit in the spaces in between. Let's try to find a little bit of lightness here within these two Saturn signs. Let's find some benefit, some contemplation, some reward, some recognition. Let's find a little bit of space for whatever it is that you need to find space for. So, I'm going to start by taking a deep breath and releasing it. Yes, I know we haven't lit the candle yet, but I need to take a deep breath, so I'm going to do one more. We are in this in-between space, in between an era of Pluto in Capricorn, the earth sign of Saturn, and Pluto moving into Aquarius, the air sign. We're moving from the space that is down here and pulling us down and weighing us down into the space that is moving up above. So let's find some benefit in the in-between space, shall we, before we are up and before we are down. So I'm going to light our intentional candle, and as I do so, I'm going to watch the flame grow. And as we see the flame on the intentional candle grow, so does our intention. I find benefit in the space in between. I find benefit in the space in between. So, let's start by finding a nice comfortable position. If you would like to sit down or lay down, stand up, whatever works for you, wherever you are most comfortable. But find a relaxing position. And if you're ready, go ahead and close your eyes. If you're not quite ready to do so, then just soften your gaze and let your focus fall wherever it naturally falls. Quickly and gently, we check in with our breath. We always start this process, start this meditation with taking a moment to recognize where we are at currently. Level of energy that we bring along with us, the level of stress, the level of tension. the level of ambition, the level of love, and the level of acceptance for wherever you are at this very moment. After you've taken a moment to be honest with yourselves and make space for where you are at, start to deepen your breath. Start to slowly inhale and slowly exhale. Continue breathing in and out, inhaling and exhaling, with no other goal other than to make each inhale a little bit deeper than the one before that, and each exhale a little longer and a little more fulfilling than the one before it. Here, we start to move our breath towards an energetic ideal, towards a stabilization of air and a balance of movement on either side, leveling and equalizing the breath, equalizing the air, just as the sign of Aquarius does. I find benefit in the spaces in between. As we sit in between the places of Saturn, as the sun moves through the later degrees of Capricorn, coming to meet Pluto at the very last degree of Capricorn, before moving simultaneously into the sign of Aquarius. We find ourselves in this space in between the places and the homes of Saturn, in between the frameworks, in between the systematic approaches. We find ourselves in between the homes of a planet that is often looked at as limiting or hard, which, yes, it can be difficult, it can be limiting. It can hold us within a framework or a structure that perhaps we don't necessarily want to be within. But without structures, without frameworks, so much would fall apart. So even though we're in between the places of Saturn, let's find a benefit in between here. Can we see it more about finding balance and a happy medium rather than limitations? Through the signs of Capricorn and Aquarius, can we pull ourselves closer to the sun and the moon that sits in opposition? Can we connect to the individual and the collective simultaneously. Both earthly frameworks and air-related frameworks are both necessary. I find benefit in the spaces in between. Let's explore the spaces in between our breath and see what benefit we can find there. So as you've been continuing your breathing in and out, lengthening each inhale and exhale, making each more efficient than the one before that, let's meet at the bottom of an exhale. And then together, we will inhale, and once you have fully inhaled, we will hold our breath at the top for just a moment, breathing in. Once you've breathed in all that you can, hold at the top of the inhale. What benefit can you find in this space at the moment? And exhale. Letting go and releasing all of the air within your lungs. And holding on the exhale for just a moment. What benefit can you find at the bottom of the exhale? At the end of the release, the letting go, not only the air within us, but also any stress and tension we may be holding. What benefit can you find here within complete relaxation? As you take your nice deep breath in, the air enters your lungs, filling you not only with oxygen, but also a vital energy that energizes you and fills you. After you've inhaled all that you can and you feel full and content, satisfied and supported, holding your breath at the top. Once you've taken in all of this wonderful energy, this exuberating, energetic energy, what benefit can you find at the top of this inhale? Continuing to breathe in and out at your own pace. I encourage you to pause gently at the bottom of each exhale and at the top of each inhale. I encourage you to see what benefit you can find in this space in between. Sometimes the space in between can lead to benefits that will help us in the future, help us take action, help us learn something. It's a pause for just a moment in the breath. The importance of this space in between the breath. The space in between holds a purpose, and we look to find the benefit within. As you continue your breathing in and out, giving yourself space to explore in between. Let's think of some other in-between spaces that hold a great purpose. Visualize a brick wall in front of you. Brick walls are strong, supportive, and difficult to break. If you were to take several bricks and stack them on top of each other, you could knock the bricks over without too much force. However, when you build a brick wall, what is in the space in between? There's a glue and there's a mortar in the small in-between space of each brick, uniting brick 1 and brick 2, holding them together, uniting their strength, serving a purpose of turning regular old bricks into a brick wall. Now visualize a strawberry in your mind's eye. And as you visualize this strawberry, picture what is in between the fleshy spaces of the strawberry. Within that space, in between the flesh of the strawberry, the flesh of the fruit, are seeds that give life to more fruit, serving a beneficial purpose for the future. Now imagine the cells in your body. There is small intercellular space in between each and every cell within your body, through every inch of your body. This space holds a purpose and a benefit. The space in between cells holds fluid, nutrients, and other chemical compounds that make that space conducive to the action specific to that area of the body. There is benefit within that space in between the cells. There is benefit in the spaces in between the flesh of a fruit. There's benefit in between the space of a brick wall, where the mortar holds the bricks together, creating the wall. Perhaps sometimes we don't pay enough attention to the space in between. We think about where we've been and where we're going. But what about where you are right now? As Pluto sits at 29 degrees of Capricorn, straddling the earthly temple of Saturn, in the intellectual air temple of Saturn. What benefit can you find in this space in between? What has paved the way for what is to come? What structures, what frameworks has changed in your life since 2008? What changes within society and the world has happened? And where do we go from here? What benefit can you find in this in-between space? That answer is for you and you alone to figure out. And as we close this meditation, I want you to picture yourself floating down a river. The river is the space in between the spaces of Earth, in between the land. In between what is on our left and what is on our right. And in this space in between, we flow just like the flow of a river. Our breath flows, our mind flows. And our life flows. Let's move into this period of Pluto and Aquarius with a Mercury trining Jupiter mindset. Expansion and abundance of the mind. A little bit of luck and a little bit of wisdom. Perhaps a lucky resource coming our way. Let's move into Pluto and Aquarius with a Venus and Neptune mindset. In awe of the creativity around us, mixing passion and compassion, having a little empathy while letting our creativity soar. Meanwhile, allowing ourselves to dream slightly romantically. Finding peace, love, and serenity. And bring my hands together at my chest, prayer pose. Although my hands are together, there is small spaces in between my hands. Even if I can't see them, I know they're there. And within this space is an energy. This space in between my left hand and my right hand. The left side of my body, the receiving end, and the right side of my body, the giving or extending end. There is a space of benefit here. a space of cultivation, a space of energy coming together. A space of structure. As always, thank you, thank you, thank you for joining me in this meditation as we contemplate the upheaval and the deconstruction and reconstruction of the Saturn signs, both within our own lives and in the collective society and greater communities around us. So thank you, all of you, for joining me. Thank you those of you that are sticking around, because the last couple weeks these have been a little bit long. So I appreciate those of you that stick around and keep coming back, even when it's long-winded. Pluto moving into Aquarius. I'm curious to see what it brings. I'm a Scorpio rising, so it's on an angle. It's in my 4th house. I have Saturn in Aquarius in my 4th house. So when that comes along, we'll see what happens and see what that brings. But whatever it is, I'm here for it. And like Katie just said, it's perfect. So I'm going to say that that comment is for whatever is coming is perfect. How about that? Whatever is coming is perfect for where we need to be on our path. So yeah, I don't know if I should, normally I would say like happy new moon or happy full moon week. I don't know if I should say happy Pluto moving into Aquarius week or not. There is a huge, there is a huge power pack, massive energetic pull coming towards the end of this week. As the Sun and Pluto come together, you may really, especially at 29 degrees, moving, so they're going to be sitting at 29 Cap together, they're going to be sitting at 0 Aquarius together. So this is where we get that in-between space. There's this huge energetic pull at the end of Capricorn in the beginning of Aquarius. And the Sun amplifies this Plutonian energy. And then the moon coming into a trine at the exact same time, it just brings that, Saturday, what's happening? I'll look at your comment here, Melissa. Yeah, Saturday is when the conjunction is. Early in the morning in our neck of the woods. So I believe that chart that I had up had 8:44 a.m. for the exact conjunction time. And then first the moon moves into Gemini, then the sun moves into Aquarius, and then a few hours later Pluto moves into Aquarius. So really it's an all-day thing Saturday. So towards the end of this week and this weekend, it's a great place to contemplate on these things, great place to be in this in-between space here and to contemplate on what has happened within Capricorn. Look at what house Capricorn is within your chart and see what changes has happened there within the last while. So, you know, like personally for me, when I bring up my chart, it's just for an example. It's not because I really want to talk about myself. Believe me, I'm not the person that wants to hear talk about myself. So, like for myself, I'm a Scorpio rising. So Capricorn is my 3rd house. So what environmental changes have happened for me since 2008? Like I said, 2009, I graduated and moved out on my own. So I have spent since 2009 trying to figure out this new environment of how to take care of myself compared to the first while where I was living at home. Transformations around my siblings and my environment, big transformations there. There's been changes within education and short-term travel and movement, things like that. Now we're going into the 4th house, so now we're thinking more of the private sphere, more of the roots and the home life, things like that. So we'll see what Pluto has to do within my 4th house here. But contemplate where Capricorn is in your house, what house Capricorn is in your chart, and what house Aquarius is in your own chart. Yeah. Feeling, looking at the comments here once more, feeling an energetic pull, all timing though, open. Yeah. You know, that's the thing about Saturn too. Saturn, especially in the sign of Capricorn, Father Time, right? So we want to move forward, and especially Pluto wants to transform things, but within the Saturn signs, it's like Pluto wants to bring this big, huge upheaval, but then within Saturn, there's this like little bit of pullback. So it's like we have to find the right timing. We have to be open to finding that right timing. It's a balancing act there, the balance of the opposition too. So, yeah. Yeah, but Melissa, no planets in Capricorn, but it's your first house is Aquarius. So, yeah, it's gonna be good. And I'm sure we talk about I'm sure you've had changes too within 12th house as well. So, yep. That's it. That's what I have to say. Lots going on, lots to contemplate, lots of in-between stuff. And sorry that I rambled on so much, but yeah, like I said, I don't know. I feel like it was all good. I really think sorry, I'm trying to get that out of the way. I think the Four of Pentacles says a lot here. When I drew this, I was like, well, that's perfect. Look at him holding on to his earthly possessions. Look at him holding on to his pentacles here. He doesn't want to share them. He wants to keep them all there. He doesn't want to give them up. Very Saturnine. Very, very Saturnine here. Especially Capricorn especially Saturn in the sign of Capricorn here. So, you know, this is telling us that sometimes we need to move forward even if we're not feel like we're quite ready. Even if the next step of wherever the changes in Aquarius, if it's something that maybe has you a little hesitant, it's all part of the process. It's all part of the process. And, you know, with Pluto we often think of, since we're talking about the tarot here, Pluto often relates to the Tower card. So deconstruction, things falling apart, right? In the line of the tarot, what comes after the Tower? It's the Star. It's the rebirth. It's something new. And then we have the Sun, and then we have the Moon as well coming after that. So you have things being broken down, so something can be reborn, and then there's a new purpose, the Sun, new plot line, new environment, new thoughts, new memories being made, new karmic processes. Okay, so it's all part of the process, and it's all good. Yeah, it's all really great. So I appreciate all of you. Have a great night, have a great week. Look for a new intention on Sunday. Find the event on Facebook if that's your social media thing, and hit the respond button on there, because that'll help out greatly. See you all next week, and I hope you have a wonderful contemplative weekend. I hope you are able to find some sort of benefit in the space in between. And if you're not able to sit down and have like a big old huge meditative contemplative thing, like if you're just really, really super busy, even better. Try to find that space in between there. So everybody have a good night, and I'll see you next week. Bye.